In this episode of The Rig Doctor, I have an incredibly exciting episode for you. And I know I always say it's exciting, but today it's incredibly special. We get to work with one of the legends who is really breaking ground in the guitar community. It is none other than Tosin Abasi of Animals as Leaders, and the things that he's doing on the instrument of guitar with 8 strings just blows my mind. But with that said, Tosin has one sick pedal board on his hands, and he reached out to me a few weeks ago to get him some help to get his pedal board dialed in. He needed something ultimately that was more reliable, so he came back to me and said, I need to be able to revamp this pedal board, make it smaller, more travelable, able to speak MIDI to my MIDI devices, and have lots of nice options for distortion and overdrive that pairs well with the clean amp and his Morgan SW50. So I'm not going to waste any more time. We're going to get into this. Tosin Abasi and the Rig Doctor, let's do it. My name is Mason Marangella. I build rigs for the industry's top professionals. Now I'm teaching guitarists how to build rigs like the pros with DIY tips, easy mods, and all the tricks of the trade. I am the Rig Doctor. Now, as I mentioned before, Tosin reached out to me a few weeks ago. He had a festival gig coming up, and he said, you know what, Rig Doctor, I need to get a couple of things dialed in here. My board is not working reliably. Can you help me just kind of band-aid it for the festival, which we did. But ultimately, when he came back, he said, you know what, I need to have a really legit pedal board now. I've been working with the Carl Martin Octaswitch, which was great for the time. You know, when it came out, it was one of the few analog kind of switching systems that existed out there, but just wanted to upgrade to a newer system, and I recommended the Boss ES8 for that. I should also mention that Boss provided this for this actual rig build, so they're part of sponsoring this video. But nevertheless, even if you look at my old videos about which MIDI switchers I choose, the Boss was in my top 3, and I'm going to link that up here if you want to check that out. Now, in the old rig, it was really big, it was really heavy, it probably weighed 60 plus pounds in the travel case. And this was a gig bag, so it wasn't even like a Pelican or something that offered significant amount of protection. And it was really huge. It was on kind of one of the larger pedal train pedal boards. And Tosin really just wanted to make it as travelable and as easy to transport as possible. So we're actually going to be taking quite a bit of size off of it. I'm going to show you a little bit more of that down the road here. But the other thing that we're going to do is we're going to make it easy for him to be able to send MIDI commands to his Strymon effects. We're going to dial in a few other pedals. He's got some that are kind of his standbys, and then he wants to try a few of the Vertex effects on there, and so we're going to do some pedal shootouts and kind of see what works best with his particular amplifier. And everything that we use today is going to be linked down below, so if you want to purchase any of the materials, if you want to build something along the lines of what we're doing today for Tosin, or if you just want to kind of use some of the parts and then kind of go and do your own thing, you can do that, and you'll have everything listed for you so that you can replicate as little or as much of this as you want. So without further ado, I think we're going to bring in Tosin, and we're going to get a little interview here with him to see exactly what he's looking for in his own words. So let's go to Tosin.
Yeah, I got in touch with Rig Doctor because I had seen some clips of, you turning around boards quickly for guys who are on tour and might have needed it done in say a sound check situation, or they're leaving for a gig in a matter of days. And I actually had some weekend gigs coming up, and my board was, certain patches were cutting out, and I needed someone who could rectify the situation quickly. And the builds I saw looked super clean, consolidating space, a lot of the MIDI programming stuff too, so it just seemed like a really good idea. Just getting more out of my board functionally with MIDI functionality, and then the other impetus was shrinking the board. I think I wasn't really utilizing space. I wasn't doing a 2-tier thing. There's a lot. The materials on my board I think were quite a bit heavier construction-wise. So yeah, it basically boils down to functionality and consolidating it to be a more capable board that takes up less space. The other board was kind of thrown together in rehearsals with whatever cables I had. It was noisy. Certain of the buttons on the Octaswitch had to be taped down because, they were damaged. It wasn't built to spec for professional use. And so part of this was just needing to build it from the ground up to be resilient for tours and not worry about signal loss or noise in the signal or any of that stuff. So, and then, you know, the perks are the added functionality and the reduction in size. So, I mean, I just kind of didn't do my board on a professional level, and I think, you know, this build is going to be like representative of what I should have for being on stages. Cool, so I had a few open spots on my board, and I was also open to filling them with new pedals I haven't tried. So I checked out some of the Vertex line, and I've really vibed with the dynamic drive. Damn, this thing is dynamic. I really like it. It handled the like super low, and then when I would do like a higher interval steel string. The steel string is really cool too, because we have a lot of clean guitar parts that I have to cut over drums and another guitar player. It's almost like you have an amp that doesn't want to break up, and you can turn it up really effing loud, and you get a lot of the heat that you would get from that sort of volume, but you don't necessarily have like a distorted signal. You kind of have like a pushed clean signal. It's warm. I like. It's really nice. It's almost like an amp feel. And then like the character is really jangly, which I really like. I do a lot of single coil and split coil sort of tones, and I really like that stringy quality of everything.
Now you just saw what Tosin is looking for in a rig. He explains very clearly what wasn't working with what he had and what he's looking for in his new rig, and so we're going to do our best to accomplish this for him in the time frame that we have, which is a couple of days, which I think should be more than reasonable for this kind of rig. We ended up with some pretty cool Vertex pedals that are going to be on Tosin's board. He really tried out everything, and he kind of started shifting what his first place pedals were as he continued to play through the line, but ultimately we ended up with dynamic distortion and the steel string as his two favorites, so we're going to be using those in conjunction with a lot of the other drive pedals that are on the rig currently. The thing I want to talk about next is actually the entire rig, the pedals that we're deciding on, and the reasons why we're going with these particular pedals. So starting with the way that the signal path is going to go, the guitar is going to go directly into the Mesa Boogie high wire. Now, I've talked about this as being the industry best dual buffer on the market. I've done a video about buffers, which I'm going to link up here so you can see exactly what I mean when I'm talking about why it is the best in the industry. So guitar's going right into there. From there, it's going to go into the Boss noise gate, the NS2. And the NS2 is then going to go into the Boss ES8, the input of the Boss ES8, and then we're going to go into the series of loops. Loop 1 is going to be the Bogner Harlow, a really nice boost that adds a nice compression to it, has a transformer in there that was designed specially for this by Rupert Neve, great pedal. Loop 2, we're going to be using the Friedman BEOD Deluxe, which gives you basically two BEODs in one. Tosin really loves how this sounds in front of his Morgan amp. Gets a really nice distortion tone and can get even some nice overdrives in there, and it has the added mid-range control, which the original smaller BEOD didn't have. So this is great for him. Now we've left that kind of in a position where he can reach it on this particular pedal board because there is two different foot switches for different channels and on-off. So we wanted to make sure this is available to him. Even though it's switched through that loop, he can still engage the second channel if needed. Loop 3 is our dynamic distortion. We shot out a bunch of pedals, and this was one that Tosin really felt enabled him to be able to get somewhere kind of in between what the BEOD did and some of the lower gain pedals that he has, and just has some nice articulation on the top that he really liked. So that's going to be going in Loop 3. Loop 4 is, of course, the Abasi Concepts Pathos. Great pedal for really dialing in the Tosin tone. Of course, it sounds perfect for him because it was designed by him and his team. So that's going in loop number 4. Loop number 5, the Vertex Steel String. Of course, a favorite of ours, and Tosin really liked what it did on the clean tones and really just liked how it kind of offered a little bit more bloom and girth and width to the entire signal. So that's going there. Then we're going to go back into the volume pedal loop with the NS2. Now you might be asking yourself, well, how is the NS2 before and after these different loops? Well, the idea here is that any of the pedals that are producing any sort of distortion or gain are going to produce some noise that's just inherent in the way that things go. And in the type of music that Tosin is doing, if he needs to do kind of some palm muted, kind of heavy distortion stuff, sometimes it just calls for there being a noise gate. So by putting it into the volume loop, it actually allows us to be able to take this, have the send and return controlling those particular distortion devices so that we can bring the noise suppressor in and out depending on when it's needed, but not have to always have it on. The volume pedal break-in allows us to do that. From there, we're going to be going to the Empress Para EQ, and this is just a cool thing to have, especially if you need to be working with backline amps that you're not always familiar with, and you need to be able to dial it. So Tosin could really get his tone, presumably, through a super clean linear twin reverb if he needed to. Then loop 7, of course, the classic Strymon timeline. That's going to be connected through MIDI to the ES8. And then lastly, we're going to the Strymon Big Sky, also connected through MIDI. And then it's going to go out to the boomerang, and then the boomerang is going to take it back through the Mesa Boogie high wire to get that output buffer, because again, it is a dual buffer, it has an input and an output buffer. We're going to be using, of course, our go-to, our Get Off My Case pedal boards. They donated this pedal board for the purposes of this video. They donated this to Tosin, so I want to give a shout out to them. But we always use these guys because they're one of the best in the business, do a great job, very reasonable. Turnaround time is incredibly fast, so I highly recommend them. I've linked them in the description if you want to check out more pedal boards. And stay tuned because they're going to be building some Vertex exclusive versions of these pedal boards that are designed to fit in Pelican cases and SKB cases, so you can actually have kind of like an all-in-one if that's something that you desire. This is 28 by 14, so this is going to allow us to be able to have everything that we wanted. This is significantly smaller than the pedal train that Tosin had. His pedal train was about 4 inches deeper, so it was coming out to about here, and it was about 4 inches wider as well. So we're going to be able to take it down quite a bit, and as you can see, this is 3/4 inch of thickness, so it actually is much thinner than what he had, but the rigidity of this thing is unparalleled. This is a nice composite that's then laminated with Formica, and then the bottom side is laminated with ABS, which is like a petroleum-based plastic. Super indestructible. I've never had one go down. I've never had one break. These are great, great quality. That's what we're going to be using for the pedal board, so shout out to Get Off My Case. Great stuff. This is linked down in the description. So one thing that we're going to do in addition to, of course, using our Get Off My Case pedal board is we're going to be using some lifts and risers. Now, if you've seen any of our videos before, you know that for guys like Rhett Shull, we kind of pioneered this idea of what he called the Strymon bridge. Now, that was just kind of a unique way of saying that we use kind of this tiered system to be able to elevate levels of pedals above kind of the base layer, so that either you'd have the ability to go up to step on those pedals, or you just be able to give yourself more space by being able to route cables underneath. So of course, we're going to be using a Strymon bridge from our good friends at Fix Pedal Boards. These are incredibly well made, and now they've got them all done in black powder coating, so they look great, easy to get on their website. You can go right there and you can custom order pretty much any size. We're going to be fitting the power supply under this. We're going to also be having cables routing underneath this, and also having some pedals underneath this, so that we're able to kind of mount this on top of the pedal board. To give you a visual, this will mount somewhere on the top here, and then the ES8 will have all the plugs kind of going underneath this. So this just gives us tons of surface area to work with, and it's easy for us to be able to kind of maximize the space, even though we're consolidating significantly by using this size pedal board as opposed to the pedal train. Now, we can't have a board without a power supply, and on this, I went to the best of the best, guys that I use all the time, which is our good friends over at True Tone. We're using the One Spot CS12. This is a great power supply because it allows us to use basically one output for each individual pedal. There's only actually one more pedal than there is actual outputs on this, and we are going to combine the two Vertex pedals that we have because those have no problem sharing. I know my pedals very well, I know how they're filtered. They're not going to have any issue with paralleling one output and making them kind of share the power there, no problem. The cool thing about this though is that Tosin uses a boomerang, and there actually is an AC output on this, so we can actually power a super high current AC pedal and use this to power it, which is great. And then if you use it internationally, you just have a little toggle switch here, a little slider, and this just allows you to go and use it in Europe or wherever you need to use it. And this really is just restricted to the AC side. Since the Boomerang does take AC, all the other pedals would automatically switch to whatever voltage it is on the input. So super handy to have that, especially if you're traveling internationally. One spot is definitely the way to go. And again, I've linked this in the description if you want to check this thing out. Now, for cables and for plugs, we got a beautiful, beautiful donation from our good friends over at Bestronix, one of the industry standard guys as far as, just buying bulk cable, pedal board materials. I'm gonna link them below because they are incredible. They have a great selection, great prices, family-owned business that we're really proud to partner with on this. Now, they donated to us 2 different types of plugs, the square plugs, and these are superior to any of the stuff that you would buy on Amazon. We're gonna be using the SP400 and then the straight plug, which is the number 4 one, throughout this rig. It's very, very easy to assemble these. They work great, but more importantly, I found a cable that I like as much as my beloved Mogami cable. We have this cable, which was donated to us also by Bestronix, which is their house brand that they designed to be superior and compete with some of the best cable manufacturers in the industry. And I have to say, I am incredibly impressed. This cable is called the CA0678. And gosh, I can't think of a cooler, nicer, easier to assemble cable than this. So definitely check that out on Bestronix website. I'm gonna link that below. Now you may be wondering, how the heck are we going to be putting all these pedals down on the pedal board? We're using something different than what a lot of people like to use, which is the pedal train that uses kind of the cloth Velcro. Well, for this purpose, as always, I use 3M dual lock, and this is the industry standard amongst pedal board professionals, whether it's me or Robert Bradshaw or Dave Friedman or any of the guys that are kind of legacy pedal board builders. I'm not including myself in that group. I'm just saying this is what they use, so I use it too. So I found one cool thing about this, and I've talked about this a lot, so ignore me if you've heard this before, but I like using 2 different types of Velcro on the board. So I use one version of 3M Dual Lock, which is called SJ3550, and I use that on the pedal side. And then there's another type that you'll see me use, which looks similar to this, but it's black, and it's called the SJ3551, and that goes on the surface. And I found that by using 2 different types, one with a thicker, denser loop pattern and one with a more open loop pattern, it actually is more rigid than if I use the same on both sides. So that's just one tip. I'm gonna link these below so that you can buy these. These are just available on Amazon, very easy places to get them. And they're a little bit pricey, but I would say a little bit goes a long way. They're very hard to remove. And I'm gonna also link a upholstery crowbar that I use if I need to remove pedals without damaging them. It's like a plastic crowbar that just allows you to pop pedals off and won't damage the paint or anything like that. So definitely check out those things in the link below. But let's look at how we're gonna lay this thing out and kind of prep the actual spacing, where things are gonna go, so you can kind of get my thinking around how this is gonna be best laid out. Back, and we have the pedal board totally done, maiden voyage here. I've tested all the cables individually as I went, but this is the first time I'm using the whole rig together. So we're running through a Bandmaster clean and an AC30 clean. So just to kind of give you a sense of like what's going on here. No funny business, super clean. All the gain is coming from the pedals, and that's what Tosin's doing. So we're really going to try to do our best to emulate a clean amp sound using distortion pedals for all the flavor. And then, of course, a couple clean pedals mixed in here to kind of give him, a couple different options here in terms of what he wants. But first, let's tune it up. We just have a beautiful mute switch here on the ES8, which is such a great switcher. Other than the buffers, which I'm not a fan of, I really think this is a great switcher. And Mesa Boogie was kind enough to throw us one of my favorite buffers, which is the high wire up there in the top corner. And that's just great. It does all our signal conditioning. It is an input buffer plus an output buffer. So it handles all of our needs as far as buffering is concerned. So let's just start right in the beginning. We got the Harlow as our very first pedal in the chain. This is kind of a compressor inspired by some of this work that Bogner did with Rupert Neve. And it's just a great sort of clean fattener. So let's just hear that. That sounds great. Adds nice fat compression, gives us a little bit more body and warmth to everything. Really like what that does. And for Tosin, I'm sure that he will be able to show you better in his context what he does with it, but really just great sounding pedal. Let's go over the BEOD, kind of our higher gain pedal, which also has the channel switching. So we had to have that up in front so we'd have the ability to go back and forth between two different dissimilar settings. So let's try that out. So here's the clean. Sounds great, nice thick. We changed channels. We got some a little bit more kind of modern high gain. Sounds great. Sounds super quiet. I want to just point something out to you about this. If you build your pedal board correctly, whether you have a noise gate or not, you are able to get great results without a lot of noise. Now, I understand we're using a humbucking pickup here, but if I go into the settings and I go and I turn off my noise gate, which is in the volume pedal loop, I'm going to turn my pickup off so we're not getting any noise from the pickup, so we're kind of treating everything equally. If I take off the noise gate, there's literally no difference in the noise floor whatsoever. Bring it back in. Take it out. Now granted, here it is with a high gain pedal on. Okay, so you can hear a little bit of the noise just from the pedal. Bring in the noise gate, and the only thing you're going to hear a difference is just maybe a little bit of that background hiss, but there's no oscillation, there's no nothing. So this is really, really indicative of what happens when you use high quality soldered cables, high quality isolated power supplies, and you use them properly. You have a great situation. It doesn't have to be done by a professional like me. If you use this application, you do it like this. You use high quality ends. You use high quality plugs like the square plugs. You use high quality cables like what we got from Vestronics. These are all things that you can achieve at home. It doesn't require that you do anything out of the ordinary. Just doing it right is enough to get a really high quality result like this, where you can almost get the same noise floor as a noise gate with or without gain pedals. So that's a pretty cool thing. So let's go back to where we had it before. Back with the BEOD on. That sounds great. Really convincing through a clean amp like a Bandmaster when you're trying to get some of the high gains. Really dig that. Let's try the dynamic distortion. Sounds great. Wow. What's cool is how good this sounds through a totally clean amp. And it's not just my pedal, it's optimizing the system so that it works great, whether you're using clean amps, whether you're using dirty amps. And I'm sure through this Morgan, which is similar to a classic Fender type front amp mixed with some Dumble style stuff, I think it's going to really work well with this. Let's try the Pathos, the signature overdrive. I like the fatness of it. Wow. Put a little EQ on it. Really dig that. That's super cool. Let's try the steel string here. It's a nice kind of clean fattener for what Tosin's doing. Put a little delay. Dig that. That sounds great. Really like what the timeline adds there just to add a little texture. Let's hear the EQ, which is super useful. This is a parametric EQ, so it's a little bit different than what a lot of us are used to having in our pedal boards with the sliders, but the benefit of this is it's actually more dialable to the frequency, and this is really optimized for guitar, so I think this is great. It also has a boost, so if Tosin wants another volume boost, he can use this and have individual control over that. Without. With, and let's just, let's try some more extreme settings, kind of like, let's just dial it how he had it. Let's see what that sounds like. Love what he's got kind of setting up here. I really kind of like it. Almost gets kind of a piezo-y, like if you're kind of doing some cleans with doing some picking kind of at the back of the bridge. I dig that. Dig that. That sounds great. And that boost is so useful at the end if you need it. And then, you know, we got the classics, timeline, a little delay, a little reverb from the Big Sky, and those are really the only real processing effects that are on this whole rig. Just adding some delay, adding some reverb, and really everything else is kind of drive-oriented or kind of utility tools like the noise suppressor, the buffer with the high wire. And I want to get into the high wire a little bit too, because I think that this is really important to reiterate, is that it is a dual buffer. That means that there's two separate buffers. One is at the very beginning of the chain, the first thing we hit, and the other one is the last thing we hit. So there's actually a send and return so that you can patch into both buffers individually. The other cool thing is that there is a level compensation. So if you don't have a humbucking pickup like this, and you want your single coils to have a little bit more juice on them to kind of match this, there's a level compensation control right on the buffer itself. Plus, it has an output boost. So if you want to do a solo boost and you don't want to have a separate boost pedal occupying your pedal board, you can hit your note and you can increase it. It looks like almost up to 20 decibels in overall output. So I think it's a really helpful tool to have. Well, you also get your dual buffer. Plus, you can have a tuner out if you need it. And we're not using that function since we're using it out of the ES8. But if you didn't have a switcher like this would be a really handy tool to use. And then, of course, we have our power supply from one spot, keeping this thing dead quiet. It's using really good quality, isolated outputs on this thing. I can't be happier. We, of course, want to thank our good friends at Get Off My Case for providing the pedal board, our good friends at Fix Pedalboards for providing all the lifts and risers that we use, not only kind of the Strymon style bridge that we have kind of here in the middle, but also the secondary one that we have for the high wire and the Friedman BEOD. So those are incredibly helpful. Bestronix provide us with this great cable, sounds incredible, really quiet, really transparent, and of course the square plugs. They're so small, it allowed us to actually consolidate this board. So it's 28 inches by 14 inches. This can fit in pretty much any variety of Pelican, SKB type cases that are out there, or of course you can make your own road case if you want. But man, this really just sounds great. And then the Boss ES8, of course, this is something that's perfect for us. It allows us all the switching capabilities we need, gives Tosin the MIDI ability that he needed for the Strymon, Timeline, and Big Sky, so it can talk MIDI to those particular devices, in addition to just giving him a really nice consolidated signal path. We also have the boomerang. I'm not going to demo this because you know what this thing does. It's just a looper, but this is also wired in before we go back to the Mesa Boogie high wire. This just allows him to set up some loops and things like that. But man, I'm really excited to see what Tosin thinks. He's going to be here shortly, and he's going to be testing it, so you don't have to listen to my playing anymore. Let's get to Tosin, and let's see what he
First impressions about the board is it is a lot smaller and lighter than before, which is amazing because, you know, flying with this stuff, it can be the determining factor between whether you want to take something to a gig or not. So having, you know, a smaller footprint for the pedal board and less weight is like huge. And I really dig the two-tier thing. There's certain pedals you don't really necessarily need access to, so those can be tucked away, and it reduces the footprint, which is nice. And actually is like, it's really cool because I have a smaller, lighter board, but because of the MIDI functionality of this loop switcher, I actually am getting way more out of the board while it's taking up less space and weighs less. So I've never had something this clean. I mean, all the cables are cut to, you know, custom cut to each length, and it's just like neat, man. It's like really kind of what you want out of like a touring rig. You can't be on stage with cables crapping out, and you know, we've even got every input's labeled into the loop switcher as well as into the pedal, and each pedal is labeled, so in a troubleshooting situation you're not guessing what is going where, which is huge. Whether you have a guitar tech or you're doing it yourself, when you're on stage, like eliminating guesswork is definitely super important. So I'm really stoked, man. It actually exceeded my expectations, and I'm really excited to jump in because each one of these, you know, Strymon pedals is full of effects that I wasn't able to get into because I was kind of not accessing the MIDI thing. So like I said, the amount of sounds I'm going to be able to get out of this board is just going to be an inspiration station. I want to give a quick thank you to some of the companies that helped out with this board by supplying some stuff. GMOC, we have Fix Pedalboards, Boss, Mesa Boogie, True Tone, Bestronix, and last but not least, the Rig Doctor.